This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And we are live here in the Matt Blatt Kia Studios on 97.3 ESPN. Glad to have you on board the show today. Of course, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We can watch the show here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, Mike Gill spent the day out at FanDuel Sportsbook at Bally's. I'm back here in the studio. Still got a lot to talk to you about today. Flyers come up at 7 p.m. We'll get to you about the Flyers with Kevin Durso in about 20 minutes from now. We got some Sixers and Eagles NFL talk to get to first right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. As always, the text board is open at 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. So, for those who didn't know, today apparently was the day that everyone wanted to talk to the media. Carson Wentz was introduced by the Colts media, well, to the Colts media in general. There were some Eagle reporters, although they weren't allowed to ask questions. Remember how all that fiasco went down? On the same day, Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni spoke to the media as well in some sort of State of the Eagles, beginning of the offseason conversation. And however you want to quantify it, however you want to explain exactly what happened today, I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions about what was said and not said. But I'm here to tell you this. What you heard today were two different perspectives on the same thing. On one side of the coin, you have an Eagles organization that basically took the position of, look, we tried with Carson Wentz. We wanted to make it work, but we're moving on. And you know what? That's fine. If that's your position, that's fine. But you didn't really answer any questions today. And that's part of the problem. You have a situation where there's a lot of reporting out there about stuff. And the Eagles really didn't answer any questions. They left more ambiguity out there than anything else. Now, whether Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni were advised to do that by the PR staff, whether this was a organizational decision, whether it was Howie and Nick just saying, look, I'm not going to answer some of these questions. Whatever the reason was, part of what Howie Roseman said today, there were a lot of honest conversations with Wentz's representatives. That's the quote from Roseman today. We told him it would have to work out for both sides if we were going to make a trade. Howie Roseman was also asked about being told that he had to build around Hurts. He says, I haven't been told to do anything except for trying to strengthen the football team. Again, another non-answer. On the flip side, you have a guy like Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz says that he doesn't want to get into the conversations. He never questioned anything in Philadelphia. He gave 5 years to the city. He says, and this is my favorite one, I can sleep well at night knowing I poured my heart and soul into Philadelphia. And here's the thing. Can we finally move on with this? Because you know what we found out today? We found out that the Eagles and Carson Wentz don't want to have a conversation. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to deal with it. They just want to move on. They're like two exes who don't want to talk about exactly the reason why they're no longer together. They're like two people who were in a relationship for a very long time, and when it ended, they want to discuss how it ended, where it ended, why it ended. And you know what? If that's their prerogative, fine. But if that's also your prerogative, don't ask me or the Philadelphia Eagle fans or the Indianapolis Colt fans to trust you. See, trust has to be earned in life. Trust is not something that should be given out willy-nilly, like free money on a Monopoly table, okay? This is a situation where sports fans invest a lot of time and energy into their teams. All right? You're not listening to the sound of my voice. You're not listening to 97.3 ESPN. You're not listening to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. You're not listening to Saturday and Sunday, The Locker Room with Billy Schwein. You're not listening to sports talk radio if you don't love or care about sports. But yet, these individuals want us to just blindly believe whatever they say. These individuals don't want to actually answer questions. They just want us to tell us, listen, we're moving on. That's the end of the story in a very nice way. So if that's the case, then when another situation comes up, you just have to accept that the general fan is not going to maybe trust you or believe you or take you seriously. There should have been nothing wrong when Howie Roseman was asked today about the Jalen Hurts report, that he was told to build around Hurts. He didn't have to be so dismissive about it. He didn't have to be so cavalier about it. He could have turned around and said, well, listen, I understand that there are reports out there like that. I understand that, there's a perception out there about this. We love Jalen Hurts. We believe that we had to build around our quarterback. There's a way you could have gone about it. And instead, he didn't do that. And it's really disappointing. It's incredibly disappointing that they can't they can't give real answers. If you want to complain about Howie Roseman, if you want to complain about the Eagles, here's something you can complain about. Will people or not complain about it? I don't know. It bothers me at least. And it really should bother you. Because you have an organization that has all this media reporting out there. These reports don't get out for no reason. Adam Schefter, Chris Mortensen, Mike Garafolo, Rob Motti, Adam Kaplan, Jeff Mosher, Jeff McClain. These people are not reporting because they happen to wake up on the right or wrong side of the bed. They're reporting because their sources are legitimate, because the information is legitimate. And instead of acknowledging, you say, well, we haven't been told to do anything other than try to strengthen our football team. What? You couldn't have acknowledged the quarterback. It seems like Howie doesn't want to acknowledge anything. Howie basically went to this press conference to take away attention from Carson Wentz's press conference. Remember, these were two dueling press conferences. They were scheduled almost the exact same time. They happened and went down at almost the exact same time. You think that's a coincidence? No. This was an opportunity for the Eagles to try to draw attention away from Wentz's press conference. Because Howie didn't really tell you much. Now, if you want to dissect certain things and read between the lines, you could do that. If you really want to, you could pick it apart piece by piece if you really wanted to. But it seems like the Philadelphia Eagles have learned that people are nitpicking everything that they say. And because people are nitpicking everything they say, they've become more and more selective about what they're willing to say. For better or for worse. And it just would have been nice that, listen, it would just be nice if the organization would be a little bit more open and a little bit less controlling of the narrative. That's all. But I'm telling you right now, if you can't answer simple questions, you're walking on a very thin line between giving a public relations style answer and being intellectually dishonest. And when you have answers like that Howie Roseman gave today, it's hard for me to trust you. Now, will the people who hate Howie Roseman actually latch on to this and want to talk about this, or are they going to stick to he's not a football guy because he's small, he's short, he's skinny, and he's got a little squeak in his voice? Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. 609-403-0973 is the text where also you comment on the shows you watch on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter here on 97.3 ESPN on our social media platforms. The other thing I want to get into today is Sixers. Weird loss last night. Weird loss last night. First of all, I'm not going to take too much from that game. You play without Embiid. You had multiple chances to win the game. It just didn't get done. It happens. But what we saw last night were some encouraging things. I was listening to somebody talk about this the other day, and if I could remember who it was, I would give them credit. But I was listening to a podcast. They mentioned the fact that when coaches watch games, they look for the things that are positive in the losses and negative in the wins, not just the things that might satisfy the average fan watching. And so I thought, all right, I want to take that same approach with this Sixers game. What did I notice in the game? Well, the initial negative is they shot poorly. They shot under 40% for the game. So that in and of itself is a problem. Ben Simmons went 6 for 16. Tobias Harris went 8 for 23. You can't win any games if those guys are shooting that poorly, even if Embiid is on the floor. But I think there were some positives to take from this game. And one of those positives is the bench kept playing through everything. There was never a point in time where the bench came into the game and they quit. Never. Sixers had a solid lead at halftime. The Bucks won the second half, and then they took the overtime. That's how the Bucks won. And part of the reason why the Bucks won is because they shot better than the Sixers. Barely, but they shot better, especially in the second half. And what you saw from this game is the Sixers really need their bench step up. And for the most part, the bench did. Dwight Howard, Shake Milton combined for 28 points last night. The bench scoring altogether was actually 39. Why is that significant? Because the 39 scored by the bench was 9 more points than Harris and Simmons combined for. So your bench outscored your 2-star players. And again, the whole team shot poorly, except for 2 guys, Dwight Howard and Shake Milton. So to me, what do I take out of that game? I take out of the game that the bench was still engaged. The bench was still fighting. The team didn't quit because the Bucks punched them in the mouth in the third quarter. They didn't give up when the Bucks fought back into the game and forced it to overtime. They didn't quit in the overtime. They kept fighting. And to me, that's the big takeaway from this game. If you are a Sixers fan and you look at the Sixers and you're saying, man, that was a rough game to watch last night, I'm telling you right now, the big takeaway for me is the team didn't quit. Now, if they make a few more shots, they would have won the game. But they didn't. So you move on, you learn from it. And, maybe next time Giannis has to sit down on the court and everybody can boo at him. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Game Night being brought to my friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. One of the things I love about betting basketball on FanDuel Sportsbook is I'm always finding new player props, game lines, and more that I can put into same-game parlays. You can only find them on FanDuel Sportsbook. Same-game parlays, you can combine point spreads, player props, over-unders, and more into a same-game parlay to get a big payout on a small bet. And right now, new and existing users can get up to $25 in site credit back each day if your parlay falls one leg short with same-game parlay insurance. You heard that right. Every day, you can get same-game parlay insurance only with the same-game parlays on FanDuel Sportsbook. Unlike some sportsbooks that sit there and only give you bonuses and for new users, this is for existing users as well. So, if you are already a FanDuel Sportsbook member, if you've already signed up, this is for you as well. You can get same-game parlay insurance. You just got to opt in every day. You got to miss one leg on your same-game parlay. And you know what? You still get that credit up to $25 site credit back. If you're a new person to FanDuel Sportsbook, what are you waiting for? Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today. Sign up with my promo code Hennig so you can get same-game parlays and the same-game parlay insurance with FanDuel Sportsbook. Again, promo code Hennig with FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 in order to play and present in NJ or PA. Refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max refund $25. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for full terms, conditions, and details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. We're getting to the Flyers next. They lost 9-0 last night. They're back in action again tonight. Very strange scheduling. Might be a blessing in disguise to come back after losing 9-0. You got punched in the face. What are you going to do next? So we'll get to that coming up next, as well as your thoughts and comments this hour. 609-403-0973. And if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, we will get you your comments as well here on Game Night. I'm Josh Hennig. This is 97.3 ESPN FM. And don't forget the free 97.3 ESPN mobile app, all your Sixers, Flyers, Eagles, and Phillies coverage, as well as high school sports coverage over on 97.3 ESPN.com and 97.3 ESPN mobile app, where you can also listen to tonight's Flyers game and the 2021 NCAA tournament.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. A little bit later in the hour, I'll get you my FanDuel Sportsbook picks of the night. Since I won't be here for Friday and Saturday, no shows, NCAA tournament, I'll give you some of my picks for the NCAA tournament. Don't forget about the $1 million bracket going on right now over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Your chance to win a lot of money. All you got to do is put your bracket in over at 97.3 ESPN.com, and you have a chance to be in the prize running. That's right. 97.3 ESPN.com, the $1 million bracket. So I'm purposely playing this music because Kevin Durso is joining me here on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline. So for anybody who's ever played a video game like, Tekken or Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, I feel like this music is appropriate because you know the part where they say finish him? I feel like they said finish him multiple times last night for the Flyers game. It was like they went for the kill shot again and again, and there was nothing the Flyers could do about that. And that music literally reminded me of when they say finish him on a video game. Kevin, I know last night was absolute torment and torture for any Flyers fan or anybody who likes hockey in general, because it felt like one team showed up and the other team just gave up at one point.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I felt like from the third goal that the Rangers scored, it was the first one of the second period. It was about a minute and a half in. From there, I thought that after that, yeah, exactly that. They just gave up. And that's really the most embarrassing part of it. It's not the final score, really. I mean, look, that's embarrassing, don't get me wrong. But the embarrassing thing is the reason the final score was what it was is because from that first goal of the second period, which later featured 6 more, the team quit. And that's the real shot to this team, is that you can't be like that. Not in a shortened season, not in any season, not in any game. You can't quit on everybody else. And they all collectively quit, which is even worse.
So is there something we can take from that game? Is there a wake-up call? Is there an opportunity for them to turn around and be like, hey, you know what? We can't let that happen again. What can we take from a game like that? Or is that just a blip on the radar for the season at this point?
The thing you can take, in my opinion, is that, the team was running, I believe it was earlier last season, maybe something like that, but the team's slogan was something like now or never. That's what you can take from it. It's now or never. You either go out and take control of your season again and try to find a way to win this game tonight, or you can start to get ready to see some significant changes coming possibly, because that's the type of game that makes everybody start looking in the mirror. That's an organizational failure from top to bottom, because you see how management has kind of left some of the holes unfilled. They put their trust, management did, in the players that were returning and the younger players to take a bigger step. It hasn't happened. The coaching staff did not, in my opinion, put out the most optimal lineup last night, and you saw that from the first goal of the game. Andy Andrioff is beat on the wall. Connor Bunneman's beat going to the net. It's 1-0 Rangers, and that was only the beginning. And then from a player standpoint, I said last year going into last season that now that you had a new GM who just completed his first offseason, now that you had a new head coach, you better show up or it's going to be the end of your time in Philadelphia. And the way that this season is now progressing, the way that this month has gone, and the fact that you are starting to enter more and more of a tailspin and more of this snowball effect, you've got to show up tonight. That's the message. You've got to show up, and if you don't, and it starts with that and then goes into Saturday, you're playing the same team. You're playing the Islanders again. You're playing the Islanders again at home on Monday. If you really carry it over, I mean, I don't know that anything is going to happen after tonight specifically if they don't win this game. But if it carries over and you have the same thing Saturday, the same thing Monday, you might be chalking that season up already. And that's a scary thought when every game that you play is worth 4 points in the division technically, because you can go out and take 2 away from somebody else as easily as you're gaining the 2. And technically, you're mathematically plenty still alive in this season. You're 3 points out of a playoff spot. But yet, it's going to show just how far away they are if you continue to let this go much longer than what it is. You've already had a rough start to the month, and now it's really come to a head with a 9-0 loss like that.
Now, you mentioned, well, first of all, you said a lot of things there. I can't dissect everything, but there's a couple things I want to focus in on. You mentioned management, okay? Management thought. Now, is that specifically in your eyes Chuck Fletcher and his people? Is the coaching staff involved in some of that? Like, how do you delineate that? Because one of my concerns right now is I can't blame the coaching staff for what I see on the ice right now. Like, I can't blame them for everything. They might have some culpability, but my concern is, does management's assessment and them potentially making changes, does that include the coaching staff? Does it include players? Like, where's the source of some of this?
Well, so I differentiate management from coaching in that sense. Then my standpoint on management and making that statement is that you went through the offseason, you didn't make many upgrades, you focused on the internal things you had. You focused on it forward. Oscar Lindblom and Nolan Patrick are coming back. That should be an improvement. You focused on defensively, another year older and wiser for Travis Sanheim, Phil Myers, Robert Haig, you name it. And then you thought, let's bring in Eric Gustafson and see if that creates more offense and focuses less on playing in the defensive zone and you control the puck more maybe or something like that. And that was an oversight on the part of management to sit there and assume that that was the step that was going to be taken. It's fair to look at it and put some trust in it. And the same thing goes on the coaching side. Alain Vigneault gambled this weekend when following a game on Saturday, he said, we're trending in the right direction. He placed his bet on the players that was the lowest point it was going to be, that they were going to come out on Monday, find a way to win a game, start to improve, that they were going to do that throughout the week. And they made him look foolish. They flat out made him look foolish with that game, because you can't make a team, you can't play that poorly and just quit like that in the middle of a game and say you're trending in the right direction. You're trending in the absolute wrong direction, and it's plainly obvious. It's so obvious. So everybody's at fault for something like that, because from a coaching standpoint, they don't look prepared to play games. From a player standpoint, the execution is as awful as it gets in a lot of situations. And from a management standpoint, you placed your trust on a lot of people to take those steps and grow, and it's not happening. And now you're halfway through a season. Tonight is, I said in my takeaways, it's very fitting that this game leads into the exact halfway point, because this is when you are supposed to be able to make an evaluation and sit there and say, well, are they still that one piece away but contending? And you go, okay, get that one piece in here and it possibly puts you over the top. Where are they in terms of that? And right now, I wouldn't be looking at any acquisition to be made in that sense, because you don't gamble your season and your future and all of these other pieces and things like that on a playoff appearance that's one and done. And that's what they look like right now at best. At worst, they wouldn't even make the playoffs. So you have to really factor that in when you think about making a trade, because if you're going to make a trade and say that's the improvement we need, and then it doesn't pan out and you still miss the playoffs, now you've really screwed up your plan when it comes to expansion. You've traded possibly some assets that you would have for the future. You need to make those decisions in due time, and you're running out of time to make that decision to determine whether or not you're a team that can be that playoff team, make a bit of a run, or just fizzle out and either barely make the playoffs or not at all. And that's why this game is so important, because if you're going to make those decisions, you need that loss, that 9-0 debacle that took place, and you need that to turn your season around right here, right now. And if it doesn't, then it's going to lead to a lot of other things that sellers do, basically.
Kevin Durso joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Flyers versus Islanders coming up at the top of the hour right here on 97.3 ESPN. Tim Saunders, Steve Coates on the call right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. And, of course, streaming on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. You mentioned the standings. Flyers currently 3 points behind Boston for the 4th spot in the East. And you mentioned there about trades. That was the other thing I was going to ask you about. I feel like because the trade deadline is so far down the road, it might not be in people's right in their minds. But you brought up a point to me about a week ago. You said you got to make a trade sooner than later because guys have to go through COVID protocol. Maybe you got to get a guy from Canada. He's got to travel across the border. If you trade from a guy on the West Coast, he's got to travel like the East Coast. Things are not as fluid as they would be in a regular season right now. So to me, I want to know, with that in mind, does that make it even more important for the Flyers, not just to make a deal soon, but to make the right deal soon?
Well, I don't know if it makes it more important to make a deal soon because, quite frankly, if you're not going to take the steps to go forward to show that you're worthy of being in this playoff discussion, then you shouldn't be playing to make deals like that. You shouldn't be a player in deals that bring you something significant back in return, where you're sending away players on the current roster that don't factor into your future, when you're sending away prospects who are part of your future, when you're sending away draft picks you could use. That was kind of the point of Chuck Fletcher saying all those things about what Ron Hextall did. You had draft picks that you could use later on when the time became right to make a deal like that. You have prospects that you can maybe afford to part ways with because now is the time. It's here and now. You got to go for it. But this team doesn't look like they're in a place where they can say they can go for it right now. That's the hard part, is you're sitting on possibly a week or two left to make those decisions about whether or not you should go all in and make the deal or not. And there's going to be some hesitance on the part of management to sit there and say, do we gamble all of this? Do we say, do you push all the chips to the center of the table and say, we're all in this year? Or do you take a step back and realize that that's not your team right now? And I think that that's the battle they're fighting. And that's why I say it's up to the players tonight and over the weekend to make that decision a little bit clearer for management, to sit there and say that 9-0 game was a one-off. That 9-0 is a blip on the radar for this season, and it's the turning point that gets them back into the playoff race. But that's up to them to do, and it's not an easy situation when you do that and have to play immediately the next night. It's a good thing and a bad thing, because it's a good thing because, as Alain Vigneault said, short memory, and he was very short with his answers last night. You could sense the frustration. You could sense the fact that that's an unacceptable performance and an unacceptable result, at least from him specifically. But at the same time, you got to go out there and now try to give it your all here, and you still played a game. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that because they kind of didn't really play for much of the last 2 periods of that game, I think they should be ready to go. They should be able to find that other gear and be ready to go. But at the same time, it's a game in a back-to-back situation, and you're dealing with a lot of issues. You're dealing with the defensive struggles, which were completely on full display in that game last night. And your goaltending is right now completely lacking all confidence. And that's a really scary thought as well, because here come the Islanders. I don't care if they don't have Anders Lee for this game and he's out for the season, or close to the rest of the regular season anyway. And it means that the Islanders are missing their captain and one of their leaders. It doesn't really matter to me, because right now you saw what the Rangers just did. So I don't care what one piece brings to the Islanders or what it takes away. It doesn't really make a difference. It's a team game, and the Islanders have been able to pick up the pieces without guys before, and they're certainly going to be looking to find a way to do that again, especially against a team that right now knows what hangs in the balance and knows, and is as fragile as the Flyers are.
Before we get to the game specifically tonight, I have to ask, is Alain Vigneault's job in trouble at all?
I don't believe so. And I don't believe so because you don't hire people and then in a year make a reversal on that decision without evaluating something bigger than that. To me, you've gone through a stretch of time right now, and I actually said this on the new episode of Open Ice Hits this morning that dropped. You don't have, over the course of the better part of the last decade, the Flyers have had 3 different general managers and 5 different head coaches. And at some point in time, it stops being the management that puts the team together to an extent, and it stops being the coaching staff that's supposed to be the guiding post, and it becomes the players that are the problem. And that's what I think you're battling with right now. Is this is going to be viewed as a player issue more than likely, because of the fact that it just seems like the same things are happening on a nightly basis. And if for some reason there's no reason for Alain Vigneault to come in that first season get what he got out of them, be a Jack Adams finalist, make it look like he's this, all-world head coach like he is. He's got the win total he does for a reason in his career, and yet tune out that voice within a year and a half of him being hired, essentially, or 2 years of him being hired, 2 seasons, however you want to look at it. If that's what's happening, then you've got a player issue and the locker room's a problem, and you're going to have to address that, and it's not going to be pretty. So that to me is the thing. I don't think Alain Vigneault's in danger at any point. The only way I could see that happening is if somebody from way higher up than Chuck Fletcher even decided to come in and just say, you know what, that's the end of it, clean house completely, and done deal, but I don't see it going that far just yet. But you're starting to approach some significant changes for sure.
Kevin Durso joining us here on Game Night. Flyers take on the Islanders at 7 p.m. The full preview of the game tonight is over at 97.3 ESPN.com and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. So far this year, the Islanders are 12-0-2 at home this year, Kevin. Very interesting goaltender matchup, though. I never thought I would say this for the year, but you mentioned now this might be an important moment for the season. So Brian Elliott, who has marginally played better than Carter Hart overall, and you got a guy in Varlamov who the analytics might tell you he's having a great year, but then he has a handful of games where he looked like an abomination. So there's a lot of strange things that go into this game tonight, in my opinion.
Well, let me update that for a second here. Carter Hart's actually starting the game tonight, not Brian Elliott. Basically, the bottom line when it comes to some of these back-to-backs and things like that is we were kind of left guessing, especially after a game like that, because when Brian Elliott got the start against the Rangers, and then I tweeted even, I think, after the 4th goal, if they're looking for relief from a goaltending standpoint, it's not coming because you've got a game the next night, and you've already made your decision. You've got Carter Hart lined up to go the next night, so Brian Elliott's in for the long haul. It would have kind of been like, I kind of thought we were on our way to the Boston game all over again, the 6-1 Boston game where Carter Hart was smashing his stick over the net and things like that because he was on the hook for the whole thing. He was in net for the whole game. And that's sometimes how it goes because you're just setting yourself up for the next game or going off of what you had previously, and you just don't feel like there's a good time to take the guy out. I was very surprised to see them make the goalie change, to be honest, because I thought they were going to keep it lined up that way. And that made me think that because they were making it, that was a move at that time that says, keep Brian Elliott as fresh as you can for the next day and hope for the best. And instead, they actually are going back to Carter Hart, which is a surprise. I believe that it wasn't said specifically by Alain Vigneault in his press conference this afternoon about a couple hours ago, but I believe Alex Lyon is going to be the backup tonight, which he was recalled off the taxi squad. So I assume that he's going to be on the bench just to be there as a presence in the event that they need him for anything. This way, Brian Elliott's off and out of the picture again, like he was earlier in the week, because you never know. But and the same thing with the Islanders. We don't know for sure that it's Varlamov because Barry Trotz is very secretive about his goalies. Barry Trotz kind of has a funny little thing going sometimes where he sits there and tells people that a Russian is in goal, and both of his goalies are Russian. So that means you can take your take a guess. I assume it's Varlamov because the Islanders don't have the back-to-back situation. They've had some time. Usually it's Varlamov. That's my assumption. I wouldn't be shocked if it's either one, quite honestly. But nonetheless, you're kind of in a situation where both goalies have given you some really good performances. And you're right, the home record really speaks for itself. This is a good team. And I know that there was a lot of question marks about the Islanders early in the year when they made the trip to Philadelphia, and it was kind of like, this doesn't look exactly like the same Islanders team that played in the playoffs and kind of what's going on with them and things like that. Now they're showing you what they really are, and that last season and last playoff was no fluke for them at all. They're a good team. They're a well-coached team. They're always in the right positions, and they're always a good defensive team. They're tough to play against. They're tough to score against, and that's really your challenge because one of the things that the Flyers have done poorly is allowing goals. I believe that the stat is they've allowed 3 or more in the last 9 games. And if you have to bank on scoring 4 goals in this game tonight, that's trouble. So you really need your best defensive effort. And again, Alain Vigneault is kind of placing a bet on some of the players because he's giving most of the lineup that he had in there last night, the only exception being Robert Haig, who's going to be out with an injury for a few weeks, it looks like. But otherwise, he's putting Nate Prosser back in for Robert Haig, and he's playing the other 5 defensemen who all had their struggles in that game on Wednesday, and he's basically giving them the benefit of the doubt that they'll learn from it and be better, and they better be right, because if in a lot of ways. If he makes that bet and they're wrong again, that's in kind of an oversight on his part in terms of the coaching side. And obviously, it's a huge player issue if that's the way it goes as well. So that's the gamble that they're taking in this game. They know what's on the line, and the Islanders are a pretty hot team right now that are going to give them a really good test. So it's kind of all plays out the way that it needs to for the Flyers in that sense, because we're going to learn a lot from this game.
And what I learned from the Open Ice Hits podcast is that you've described the Islanders' style of play as boring and ugly. So we have a lot to look forward to tonight in this game. You have a team that got bludgeoned.
I call it boring, but it works. So it might be boring, but it's successful. And quite honestly, I remember describing the Flyers play toward the playoff push kind of like that too, where it's like most of the time they play kind of a boring game, but they find a way to score when the opportunity arises, and they hold teams to 1 or 2 goals a night. You sit there and you go, it's successful.
So what you're saying is that we have a boring game tonight, the Flyers might actually have a chance to win. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Well, no, I'm telling you that the Islanders are going to give you their usual boring game.
Okay.
But that was something that was working for the Flyers a year ago, where, it was kind of a boring style, but at the same time, if defense is boring, then I don't think you want that much excitement, because right now you're getting mass chaos in the defensive zone. So,
Gotcha.
Take that for what it's worth.
He's Kevin Durso. Follow him at Kevin_Durso, the co-host of the Open Ice Hits podcast. Of course, check out all of his work at 973ESPN.com. And as all guests, he had joined us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Kevin, I appreciate you doing something that nobody in the Philadelphia Eagles organization wants to do, which is answer questions today.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Great stuff from Durso. I mean, he does a great job covering the Flyers, all the NHL as well. But I always love asking him those questions because he's going to give you a straightforward answer, unlike Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni today. FanDuel Sportsbook picks of the night. Actually, the picks for the weekend. I got a couple picks for you for Friday and Saturday's games that I'm watching, I'm focusing in on, games that I'm zeroing in on. I'm going to tell you those games next. And we'll get to your thoughts and comments at 609-403-0973 on the text board. And all of you watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, your guys' comments next here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can watch the show. Just follow 97.3 ESPN.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. 609-403-0973 is the text, but also get your comments over there on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter here on 97.3 ESPN. Also get you my FanDuel Sportsbook picks for the weekend, because there'll be no shows next couple days because of the NCAA tournament. And listen, there's always that one team that ruins your bracket. We all have about 1 or 2 brackets, right? Everybody's got more than one. Well, how many brackets you got? There's that one team that ruins it every year. That's why this year I'm betting on the tournament with FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook, because FanDuel Sportsbook, your first bet is risk-free. It doesn't matter who you're betting on. New users get up to $1,000 in site credit back if your first bet doesn't win. With games all day and night, FanDuel has an easy-to-use app with fast withdrawals and daily odds boosts. Your next chance to win is with FanDuel right now. You can win with FanDuel Sportsbook. If that's not enough, FanDuel wants to make you a millionaire. That's right, you. They want to make you a millionaire because they're giving away $1 million to one lucky bettor. So new and existing users can get an additional shot at the payout every day you bet the tournament. So if you want a shot at becoming a millionaire or even a thousandaire, download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Use my promo code Hennig to get your risk-free bet and a shot at becoming a millionaire. That's promo code Hennig with FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or to play and present in NJRPA. Restrictions apply for $1 million drawing. Risk-free offer for first online real money wager only. You cannot bet on local college teams in Virginia and New Jersey. See full terms, conditions, and details at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right. Now we got that out of the way. I know it's a long disclaimer, but we got to get it all in. This comment came in a little bit earlier. We're talking about the Sixers. Tom, watching on Facebook, says, while the Sixers didn't deserve to win after blowing the lead last night, at the end the Sixers fouled on the inbounds pass. It didn't get called, and the Bucks were for a wide open layup. That irked me because Had the refs called the foul, Korkmaz's 3 would have been a game winner. Well, that's the problem, Tom. In the regular season, the officiating is always going to be a little bit less than satisfactory. You know, in the game after the Sixers on ESPN, I'm watching the game between the Mavs and the Clippers, and they spent so much time trying to figure out what the right call, quote unquote, was, that I'm sitting there watching and I'm listening to the broadcasters basically make fun of the officials for taking so long. And the problem with officiating is because you're not getting the best quality officiating in the regular season, you're going to have those moments. So on one hand, Tom, you're completely justified on being irked and being bothered by that. On the other side, you got to have to realize that bad officiating is part of the regular season. They don't let certain officials officiate in the postseason. They do the same thing in all the sports. NBA, NHL, NFL, Major League Baseball. Certain officials don't make the cut for the postseason. So, yes, that's frustrating, but at least you can take solace in the fact that you're not going to have to deal with that again the rest of the regular season. All right. So, I have a bunch of picks to get to here with you guys because I've been listening to Jeff Nadu on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill all week. I've been trying to consume as much content as I possibly humanly can about the tournament. And I can't promise you a perfect bracket. But what I can give you is as many picks as possible for you to have a chance at making some money because nobody's ever had a perfect bracket. In fact, they were saying last night on SportsCenter, the closest anyone ever came to getting a perfect bracket, they were still 19 picks short in the entire history of ESPN's tournament challenge in the last 20 years on ESPN.com. So if you know you're going to get at least 19 picks wrong, maybe you can get some of them right with FanDuel Sportsbook. All right, you ready? Here we go. So this is what I got for you today. I'm going to start with Friday's games. Virginia Tech +1 versus Florida. Virginia Tech's +1 is a -107 on a lot of sports books. That's the sports book telling you that they do not view them as a strong underdog. That is basically a pick'em game. Money is going both directions. I say go +1 on Virginia Tech. Next game, Colgate and Arkansas. I'm going with the over 161.5. Arkansas is a team that can score 100 any night. They're also a team that play a lot of good defense. Colgate can shoot the lights out. I love Colgate as a sneaky team to win in the first round, to get an upset. But the safer thing, if you're going to throw some money on it, go with the over 161.5. I can totally see in this game being like Arkansas 100-79 over Colgate. Colgate is a team that shoots really, really well. Oregon State +8.5 at Tennessee. I think Tennessee is one of the most overrated teams in college basketball this year and in college football. But Oregon State won the Pac-12 tournament for a reason. They are tournament tested. They are tournament ready. I think that Tennessee, they had some embarrassing and difficult moments in the SEC tournament. So I like the Oregon State +8.5 there. Give me North Carolina -1.5 tomorrow as well. Listen, Wisconsin is completely overrated. I think North Carolina can actually make it to the Sweet 16 this year. Those are my Friday games. Saturday, St. Bonaventure +1.5. Osunier from mainland. He is a freak. He is a phenom. I think LSU's going to have trouble with St. Bonaventure's defense on Saturday. Another Saturday game for you, Iona versus Alabama under 147. Iona plays psychotically aggressive defense. Alabama, they themselves are not a high-powered offensive team. I think this game can get ugly and drag out. Another game I'm going with on Saturday, Grand Canyon. That's right, Grand Canyon +14.5 versus Iowa. I think Iowa wins this game, but I think Grand Canyon at least keeps it interesting because they are a better team than people realize. Also, Ohio +7 versus Virginia. Virginia has not been practicing all week because of COVID protocols, so give me the +7 for the Ohio Bobcats versus the Virginia Cavaliers. Those are my picks for you for the NCAA tournament, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Promo code Hennig when you sign up. I'm Josh Hennig. Follow me on Twitter @Josh Hennig all weekend long.